Hello, and welcome to the ALCTS webinar, Mobilizing the Library, Shifting the Focus of the Academic Library to a Student-Centered Technology Perspective. My name is Felicity Dicus, and I'm a member of the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee. This session was originally presented on May 15, 2013. Due to sound problems with the original recording, the recording you are hearing is a re-recording from September 2013. Presenters for the original session were Sonya Betz and Robert Zylstra of MacEwan University in Edmonton, Alberta. Sonya is a web and user experience librarian, a role she assumed after several years as liaison librarian for the English department. Robert is the music and performing arts librarian and brings a background as a systems librarian to his current work in reference and instruction. Today's webinar will be presented by Sonya.
Great, thanks Felicity. Again, my name is Sonya Betz, and I'm recording today from beautiful, sunny Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I'm the Web and User Experience Librarian for a medium-sized teaching university with a very diverse range of academic programs. So today what I want to discuss are a few important points. But before we get too far, I want to stress that we're missing equal parts philosophy and technology today. I'd like to begin with some background that most of you should be familiar with, and a brief exploration of this idea of user experience. I'll spend some time discussing a major challenge that we, all of us, I think, face in libraries, and then discuss the solution that we're embarking on here at MacEwan University, so user-centered design philosophy. So beginning with some background, as I mentioned, I'm speaking from the perspective of an academic setting. Our primary user group here at MacEwan University, of course, is students, and our secondary group is faculty. But all the time we're thinking about those students, those 18-year-old, first time in a university, big-eyed, confused students. So before we talk too much about them, though, I want to ask some questions of the audience. And when we originally ran this session, we did a couple of polls. So I asked all of the librarians participating in the webinar, do you use a mobile device, yes or no? Perhaps not surprisingly, 100% of librarians who participated in this webinar said yes, of course, they use a mobile device. That is no surprise to me whatsoever. So the second question I asked was, in the past week, did you use your mobile device to A, look up factoids on the internet, usually to settle an argument of some kind, B, find reviews or recommendations for something like a restaurant or a movie, or C, use an app to do something, make a grocery list, watch Netflix, online banking, etc. And again, not surprisingly, for question A, 93% of us look up factoids on the internet. Again, I think I probably use those to settle arguments with my spouse. 85% found reviews or recommendations using their smartphone, and 91% used an app to do something of some kind. So of course, nobody's surprised. These responses are in no way surprising to me either, especially in the fairly techie world of libraries and in the particularly techie world of the ALCTS group. And of course, we all know that smartphone ownership is increasing. Many of us probably now own a smartphone when we didn't a few years ago. In the United Kingdom, 60% of the population now owns smartphones. This is no surprise to you or to me. In the US, adult smartphone ownership stands at about 45%, but you can see how the number increases as age decreases. The highest percentage of ownership is, again, not surprisingly, in the 18 to 29-year age bracket, with a whopping 66%. Again, we know this. These numbers shouldn't shock anybody. What I find a little bit more interesting, though, is how people are using their devices to access online resources. In the UK, over half of smartphone owners use their phones to access websites. In the US, that number is similar, about 55%. And 17% of US cell phone owners do most of their online browsing on their phone rather than a computer or other device. Smartphones have become an incredibly convenient point-of-need information tool. Nearly half of smartphone owners reported using their phones to settle arguments, decide whether to visit a business, or solve an unexpected problem. Finally, the tablet computer is outstripping even smartphones in gobbling up market share and gaining prominence. The 2013 Horizon report identified tablet computers as a key near-term technology trend for higher education. They weren't even on the map a few years ago. Technology journalists predict that tablets will outsell the PC and laptop markets combined in 2013. I haven't checked the stats as of September yet this year, but I'm guessing that we may be close to that threshold already and should definitely surpass it during pre-Christmas shopping rush. In 2010, an interesting issue of Wired magazine looked at the changing nature of our relationship with the web. In an article called "The Web is Dead, Long Live the Internet," authors Chris Anderson and Michael Wolff investigate how we use the web. The Internet is not disappearing, obviously, but how we get to it and how we use it is changing dramatically from browser PC-based use to customized apps for specific tasks. So this is leading to a more designed, a more directed, and a more polished experience. I think that now we're starting to recognize that people want that app experience everywhere, whether it's from a custom app on a mobile device or from a website access via a desktop browser. The world is going app. I mentioned too that my audience of particular interest is students, but really I think it's important to see what the 10 or 12-year-olds are doing, because I'll see them soon at MacEwan, and often they're the first wave adopters for any new kind of technology. They like their devices, they like to connect to services and resources through their devices, and the Pew senior researcher Mary Madden argued that in many ways teens represent the leading edge of mobile connectivity. The patterns of their technology use often signal future changes in the adult population. Again, I just want to really drive the point home. We are a mobile world. So keeping that in mind, ask yourself this question. How many library vendors are designing mobile-first products? Discovery tools, integrated library systems, e-reserve solutions, software, databases, big book, e-book vendors. How many of them are designing with a mobile-first philosophy? Mobile is most often an afterthought or an added feature marketed as a value add to us, librarians. Do we as librarians demand mobile-ready technology? Why is mobile still seen as special and not a primary requirement for everything that we do? All right, so I think I demonstrated that point amply. I just want to move on now to talking a little bit about user experience. So most of you have probably been exposed to the term user experience before, but it's helpful to really get into the definition a bit. And sorry for all of the text on this slide, I know it's pretty busy, but I just want to read to you the Nielsen-Norman Group definitions. That's Jacob Nielsen. He's a founder in usability studies. He's got a great definition of user experience that really encompasses what I'm discussing here. So I'm just going to read it out. So user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. The first requirement for an exemplary user experience is to meet the exact needs of the customer without fuss or bother. Next comes simplicity and elegance that produce products that are a joy to own, a joy to use. True user experience goes far beyond giving customers what they say they want or providing a checklist of features. In order to achieve high-quality user experience in a company's offerings, there must be seamless merging of the services of multiple disciplines, including engineering, marketing, graphical and industrial design, and interface design. So often, I hear user experience used as a catch-all term for things like usability or happy customers. But it's much more all-encompassing than that. You'll notice that there's a lot in this definition about emotion and feeling, the words without fuss or bother, products that are a joy to own, a joy to use. So it's not just about whether a product is usable. It's not just about whether people like your product or you have brand recognition of your product. It's about the entire holistic experience of using the product. And really, I can't emphasize this enough, it's ultimately about the end user's interaction with the company, the end user's interaction with services, the end user's interaction with its products. Okay, I'm going to play a video. We tested this, but if you'll just bear with me for a few seconds while I set this up, I want to make sure we can capture the audio on this video as well. It's very short, so if you're not hearing good audio, that's okay. Just hang tight, and it'll be over soon. You can also access this. I'll just sit with the slide on it for a few minutes. There's a link at the bottom of that slide. You can access this video yourself if the technology does not participate for you. All right, so here we go.
Hey, just that, thanks. You sure? Yeah. Username? Nick M. No. MM1983? No. Zamni Pops? Sorry. Zamni Pops? No, okay. Don't worry, I'll help. What's your postcode? Oh, it's GU749ZT. Welcome back, Nick, forever. Please listen carefully to the spread license school before continuing with your purchase of a loaf of bread. If you do not, blah, blah, blah. You also agree not to use any bread-based products for any purposes prohibited by United Kingdom law, including without limitation, design, development, and manufacture of missiles, chemical, nuclear, or biological weapons. I'm afraid you've timed out. What? Sorry. Hello? Excuse me. Oh, yeah. Hey. Just one minute, sir. Yeah, what's your username? It's Nick Forever, but number 4, not the... Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to check that you're a real person. Could you say that for me? It's not even a word. Okay, how about this one? You know what, forget it. This one? Hip Potter Mice. You're in. Great, I'm in. £8.85. It's supposed to be 98p. That's express delivery. What's that? Oh, well, express delivery. It's fast. So there's, standard. Standard delivery. That's £4.99. Why? Bread insurance. You didn't untick the don't decline bread insurance option. You know what, I think I'll risk it. It is quite close to the sell-by date. Don't care. 98p it is. If you want to pop back in 5 business days, it'll be ready for your collection. Well, I need it now, obviously. Oh, okay. You want the take-home today price for about £3.27. You know what, I'm going to go. Come back soon. I won't.
So for me, that's a really excellent demonstration of what happens when user experience goes wrong. You lose your users. They end up looking for alternatives to your products and just check out, right? He wasn't just frustrated that it was hard to use. He was angry, he was irritated, and he just gave up and went elsewhere. So you'll see on my slide here, there's a link to that video if you want to share it or view it again. It's http://goo.gl/rxxm7. So you should be able to get to that, or just do a YouTube search for Google Analytics in the real world. So I want you to ask yourself, what kind of experience do users have in our environments? In the library website, in their different search interfaces, in the catalog, databases, discovery tool, interlibrary loan software. Is finding a full-text journal article a joyful experience? I also want you to ask yourself a few really important questions about library software. In the library software world, who is the customer and who's the end user? And the answer, of course, the customer is the librarian, and the end user is the patron or the student. There's a huge disconnect here. When companies are designing products for customers that are not their end users, there's a problem. They'll want to sell their products. The product needs to satisfy the customer's needs. But that customer's needs, our librarian's needs, are not the same as our end user's needs. My needs as a librarian in a piece of software is not the same as a student's need in a piece of software. So that brings me to some more challenges that we face in the online environment and in library land. What's the manifestation of this in the world that you and I live in a daily basis? So the problem really is shared by most libraries, I think, and other aspects of academic web space as well. But we really have these multiple online environments that lack a consistent user experience. We have our library's website, our LibGuides, our discovery tool, our library catalog, our link resolver, interlibrary loan system, e-reserve system, hundreds of distinct databases, student portal, Blackboard, course management system, room booking systems, lots of different systems working together. Each system has a distinct web space. There are different rooms for different functions. And many of these are customizable only to the extent that we can add branding for our space and tweak some of the administrative settings. Maybe we can not show a certain menu, maybe we can show additional options. As librarians, we've spent years learning to navigate these environments, and we understand how they work together. But our students are baffled by this maze. We at MacEwan, I've mentioned, are a medium-sized undergraduate institution. Our students are young, they're connected, and they come to us with expectations built by their experiences in very different kinds of online environments. They find our space frustrating and difficult, and the catch for them is that they have to use it. Their professors tell them to find peer-reviewed journals using the library. They have multiple information literacy sessions with our librarians. They take online tutorials, and they still find it difficult. We spend so much time in the classroom and at the reference desk teaching them how to navigate. I'd rather be teaching them how to think more deeply about information, how to evaluate, assess, and use information, and less time on how and where to search. Instead of clicking through menus, telling them the tips and tricks about more successful searching, I want to be able to tell them real deep skills that are going to help them in their long-term lives. I really think we need to stop trying to train our users to make up for our bad interface designs. Users are going to behave in the ways that are intuitive to them based on the whole of their online experience. We force them into awkward and uncomfortable spaces to get what they want. This is a screenshot of Robert's cat in the toilet. He wants to drink out of the toilet. He wants to drink some water, but essentially he's not getting there in a real comfortable way. We need to stop doing this to our students as well. So here's what they go through. This is a typical experience for a student in our institution. I show this sometimes to administrators. I did a session for some deans and directors, and they were really astonished at how hard it could be just to find a book in the library. I'm sure many of your web spaces aren't as bad as this, but this is an experience for one of my students. So they want to find information about something, so they type some keywords into a search box on our library website. And you and I all know this is our discovery service widget. They just think they're typing words into a library search tool. They're immediately launched into something we call a discovery tool. And again, this is not something the library created. Like thousands of other libraries, we pay for this piece of software from an external vendor, and it looks very different from the place they just were. They don't know that this is vendor-provided content and it isn't really part of the library's website. They think that we do this on purpose. So once they're here, they'll scroll around and maybe find something. They might do some more searching, but they might find something that they're interested in. So they click on a title to see more information about an item. And here's the bewildering screen they're presented with. We have lots of words. We're part of a consortium with a shared ILS, so they can request items from any library in the system. This one is located at a separate location, so to get this book in their hands, they'll have to place a hold on it to get it transferred to our campus. If they can find the hold button, it's hidden way over here on the left. Clicking this hold button takes the user out of our EBSCO Discovery Service interface and into our shared integrated library system, our CIRCE Symphony catalog. Again, it's a completely different experience and a completely different interface. At this point, they have to click that place hold button again. If they can find it, it's located in a different spot on the screen. They have to go from left to right. And once they click on it, they'll be asked to log in with a barcode and a PIN number. So they need to log in to authenticate to their library account, which is different than authenticating to the Discovery Service where they use institutional authentication. If they weren't frustrated before, they're really frustrated now because this is a completely different information than our campus-wide system. Nobody knows their PIN number at MacEwan, and this PIN number is a mystery to every single person that tries to find it. Now, if they manage to get this far, if they've successfully placed their hold, usually they'll want to go back to their search and see what other items there are that might be related to their particular information need, which is hidden in another tab or another window. So the poor students, if I was presented with this process in any retail or service environment, I would likely give up or go elsewhere. But we have a captive audience. They have to use our resources. It's an academic library. They've been told to use them by their instructors. So we spend a lot of time teaching them how to do these things. It's a losing battle. It's a huge drain on our resources and staffing, and it doesn't create goodwill. I think, too, it has a lot of impact. I don't want to devalue the advances that we've made in library technology. I think having a discovery service is a fantastic step forward. But we really need to think hard about how doing something so simple as finding a book in the library impacts the student experience. So how do our users feel? Academic libraries are well aware of the shifts in user preferences and information-seeking behaviors and the increasing primacy of digital access to information. Like many of our peers, MacEwan University has been focusing increasingly on building collections in electronic formats such as e-journals, e-books, and streaming audio and video. From 2007 to 2012, we increased our e-journal collections by 134%, and our e-book collections by a staggering 391%. During this time, we also subscribed to dozens of tools to host and search these formats, including journal databases and e-book platforms. So our students have unprecedented access to high-quality academic information sources immediately available in full text. We have the stuff. Logic suggests that student satisfaction with library collections should be at an all-time high. However, we use LibQual. Many of you may use LibQual as well. So we measure our student satisfaction regularly. And while students consistently grade the library's staff and services very highly, satisfaction with our collections has been steadily declining since 2008. Oh, this is our one of our surveys that we give to our bachelor students. This is LibQual. All right. So a rigorous service quality assessment that we completed in 2011 hints at what the issues might be. Why are students dissatisfied? In the section dedicated to our web environment, we found that the greatest levels of dissatisfaction are focused on expectations for a website that enables users to locate information on their own, easy-to-use access tools that allow users to find things on their own, and making information easily accessible for independent use. So finally, from the mouths of students themselves, this is a survey that we had on our website for quite a while that just asked some basic questions. So what was the purpose of your visit to the library's website today? The student said that he or she was trying to find articles for an occupational health course. Were you able to complete your task today? The student said no. If you're not able to complete your task today, please tell us why. Their response, blunt and to the point, search engine sucks. Our last question, do you have any other comments? Much rather not have to use the site, but I guess I'll have to learn how to use it. It shouldn't be so difficult. So these are really telling comments for me. Last thing I just want to point out, this is our CIRCE catalog on my device. Mobile first design, I don't think so. Really, I know that different vendors are creating different apps for their product, but I don't want to download 8 different apps to be able to use the library. All right, so what's the solution? What can we do to actually solve this problem? How did we start thinking about these problems and framing this solution in a way that makes sense for us and that might be useful for other libraries out there? So we decided to start pursuing a philosophy of service integration, and this quote comes directly out of an application we put together for some funding. The library has a rich base of online services and resources. It now needs to consolidate those resources into a single, consistent user experience. So our main goal, the driving force behind this project, is to begin taking some of those divergent and confusing user spaces and combine them into one nice, clean, simple space. The concept presents some challenges because, of course, we need all of those different tools in libraries. We are completely dependent on our integrated library system. We don't want to build our own new integrated library system. We don't want to build our own link resolvers or our own e-journal databases. And we can't even begin from scratch to design our own. That project is huge, and there's a well-developed industry out there that creates these products for us. Luckily, though, vendors in many of our big products have begun to provide us access to the back end of our systems and the ability to interact directly with the tool itself instead of its user interface. So every tool that we use in libraries, our discovery tools, our interlibrary loan software, our e-reserve software, all of it has the tool itself, the thing that does the work, and then it also has a user interface that up until now has really primarily been designed for students or our users to access the tool. But what if we just did away with that user interface altogether? APIs and web services, they do allow you to do this. And what this means is that we can use the power of these different systems, create our own user interface to do things as simple as searching the library, finding a book in the library. So this is a pretty simple concept, but it's really, really big. And it's scary. So the thing that I keep telling myself, the thing that I tell the team that I'm on that's working on this project, customization is an option, but be brave. Don't be afraid to think big. Don't be afraid to utterly fail. So we'll see. So far it's going well, but this is a big change from how we've done things in the past. So we really decided the only way to provide our users with a seamless, intuitive online experience was to design it ourselves, to stop relying on vendors to create web interfaces for each of their products that worked for our students, and design our own unique space. So to do this, we started identifying key services to integrate and began investigating whether there were commercial APIs or web services available. So our CIRCE Symphony ILS offers web services. EBSCO EDS launched a fully featured API back in May 2012. Our hours and contact information from the library's website doesn't have a built-in API, but we use the Drupal content management system, so it was relatively straightforward to design a custom API for that. And our e-reserve service, Aries, also doesn't offer an API, but we have a very talented programmer on staff who is able to create an API for the Aries database, which would be our first foray into developing a custom API from a commercial product. So we know that this concept is technologically feasible. We can do away with that central interface created by those different vendors and skip directly to either our own unique web interface or an app interface that builds in the power of those different tools in our own specifically designed seamless user format. Some more key concepts for this project include one access point replacing all of those different multiple access points. Mobile and desktop interfaces, especially with the primacy of mobile technologies now. User awareness, so the ability for the space itself to know who was logging in and present information that was unique to that particular user. Something as simple as a single sign-on for all of our different tools, or something that connected users to their own unique e-reserves information. Okay, fast and intuitive access to all of this stuff. And then a consistent and predictable experience. No more changing up the navigation bar from one tool into another tool. No more guessing at where that place hold button might be depending on if you're in the EDS interface or the CIRCE interface. It should be the same and it should be really, really clean. So we broke this project down into two separate phases. We wanted to start with what we saw as a major priority, which would be mobile access. Luckily for us, or maybe not so luckily, I'm not sure, we had no mobile capability at all. For us, it meant that we had carte blanche with our design. We could create anything and it would be an improvement. So we needed to start with a really big win, some proof of concept data that would generate positive responses from users and library administration, would create trust in this idea and give us a testing ground for a concept that might be a little bit uncomfortable for more traditional staff and administration. So that's why we started with an iPhone app. The first piece of this project, the first place where we experimented with this idea of integrating our services was an iPhone app. We also started with an iPhone app because it was a little bit sexy and could secure us some funding from outside the library. And of the analysis we did of people coming to visit our website, we knew that the mobile users viewing our website, over 70% of them were viewing it from an iOS device, from an iPhone. The other 30% of mobile users on our site were a combination of Android and Microsoft, BlackBerry, all of those other various platforms. So 70% of our users were iPhone users. So we submitted a successful proposal to a funding pot we have here at MacEwan called the Student Technology Fee, and secured some funding that ended up being split over 3 years. The iPhone app that we created is our test case for this integrated concept in a fully featured responsive web environment. So we're going to start with the app and then move forward into a fully featured environment. We worked in partnership with a local development company. They had some skills we didn't have when it came to developing in an iOS environment, and also could help us design something that looked really professional and slick. So things like nice graphics, really nice motion when you change screens on the iPhone. These were important to us, and having professionals do that really, really helped us out a lot. The responsive web design piece that we're working on will be mostly open source and built primarily in-house with, again, some help from the same design firm for design and development. So here's a look at our phase 1, which we launched in October last year and have continued to actively develop throughout the past year. And this is one of the major lessons that I learned working on this project. Development doesn't ever stop. It's a process, not a finished product. So we started with integration of our library information, so primarily our hours and contact information that came out of our library's website, our EBSCO discovery service to power our search functions and access to full-text online content, our CIRCE Symphony ILS for all of the account information and our catalog information, and most recently we've built in our Aries eReserve system as well into the app environment. So authentication is fairly straightforward. Users log in the first time they use the app on their iPhone, and that info is stored. A token is used to authenticate to all of these different services, to our authentication directory, to our EBSCO discovery service, into CIRCE, and into Aries, every time the student opens the app. If they log out or change their password, they'll be prompted to log in again. And even from the very beginning, this is a big improvement on the way that our web environment functions. In the app, they log in once and don't have to log in again unless, unless they've changed their password or deliberately logged out. Search is where we spent most of our time, and designing a new search interface, even for a small device, is incredibly complex. We had several iterations of search and tested extensively with students. This is our current interface, so it's the one we've most recently launched just at, actually I don't know if it's launched yet, it might launch next week. The search box has autocomplete pulled from a Google API, so once you start typing you'll see options show up. It saves typing time. The limits menu is closed by default. Here it's shown expanded. And one of the biggest failings of our vendor EDS implementation, so the thing that you search on the website, is that there's no way to restrict your formats up front. If you want to look for video, audio, book, or article content, which is how students define their world, they really do care about format, you have to search and then limit your search with facets after you've completed a search. In the testing that I've done and discussions that I had with students, I discovered that they really hate this. So we pulled all of the facets out, all of those EDS facets out up front for easy limiting. This is especially important on a mobile device. Another important element is to save the user's time. So we've got a search history that can be saved up front. They don't need to sign into any kind of EBSCO host foldering system. It's all saved in their phone. It's right there. So powering all of the search again is the EBSCO Discovery Service API. We didn't create our own search engine. We're just using the API. But what we did do was manipulate the data that the API provides and present it in a way that works way better in our unique environment. This is a results screen from a search. It was important for us to identify format, again, right up front, as this is a perpetually confusing thing for students to understand. Also, we made the citation simpler and easier to read, again, pulling this information from EBSCO and just displaying it in a way that made sense for us. Clicking on an item, record, pulls out information from both the EDS API, but also mashes up some of our CIRCE web services. You'll see that we have a holdings button that's getting catalog info directly from our CIRCE catalog, and a place hold button that pulls out the ILS account information. Instead of logging into a separate service to place a hold on a book, which is what I had to do in the previous world, I can make a request directly from the item record, select a campus, and I'm done. This process hugely simplified things for our users. I actually had applause when I showed some library staff this, because that's something, again, we struggle with every single day, placing holds between the EDS Discovery Service and CIRCE. This simplified everything dramatically. Here you can see our flyout menu. This is how you navigate around the app. If I click on the My Account section, it'll take me to all of the different features that, again, we're pulling in from CIRCE Web Services. We also have downloads, e-reserves, different campus locations, map function, card function, some featured lists of new books, and then the ability to log out on the main menu. So this is the account page that details a lot of that information in greater detail. Again, this stuff is pulling from Circe Web Services. I can see at a glance what items are ready for pickup, what items I have checked out, and this is a point where I can renew things as well. Totally seamless to the user. So a really good example of how integration can function really nicely. Here's my hold-on route coming to MacEwan City Centre campus. The other thing that we've included was information from our library's website, and this is an area we can really develop a lot more in the future. So right now, the only info that we're pulling really dynamically is location information, contact information, and our hours. So we built our own API to develop all of this information. I can click on each of those campus locations and see that contact info and current hours. I think other areas of growth that would be really helpful here would be research guides of some kind, building in that information, and some really great built-in help info might be a nice thing to have in the app. But again, I don't know. We'll see. Nobody's asked for that except for librarians. Students aren't saying, I want to know more about how to use the library because it's so easy to use directly through the app. The most recent development that we've been working on is our brand new e-reserves functionality. So here we've got an API developed by our in-house programmers. So this was one of our own staff developed this API to work with our Aries e-reserve software. So we have a commercial software product and a custom API that sits on top of that software product and talks from the software product to our app. So it was pretty simple, actually, to do this chunk. We built out a really easy custom interface that connects each user to any content they have in the e-reserve system. It'll list their courses, and for each course that they're taking that has content, it will list the different content. And that includes e-content that we've placed on reserve and can be viewed directly from the app. Some other features that we've built in, you can view full-text journal articles directly through the app. So again, this pulls from the EDS API. It attaches a piece of content. If that content is PDF, we can easily use the built-in PDF reader in the iPhone to view it. Saving and sharing downloads. I can download an article to read on my phone when I'm offline, or I can use other services that I might currently subscribe to manipulate that content in some way. So you can see here I can open it in Dropbox. I can print it if I have access to a printer. I can open in Google Drive, Evernote, Kindle. These are all things that I have on my own iPhone that I use regularly. So any other student that has apps developed that interact directly with PDFs can use those apps to manipulate PDF content that we have in the app. This one was a nice one that I didn't think would be a huge winning feature, but actually has proved to be quite popular. You can display the barcode so our students have an identification card that's also their library card, and they can use this barcode with our scanners that are enabled to read it, and they can check out books using their phone. So no more fumbling in their wallet to find their library card. They can just pull it up on their phone, which they're much more likely to have quick to hand. So the next steps that we're working on, we want to duplicate this entire experience on the web via responsive design format. So it's going to be pretty tricky. I'm learning that responsive web design has so many more things that need to be considered to be effective. So it's something that we're really working on. We hope to launch something in spring of 2014. We also hope to integrate more systems. We've built in, I think, 4 different unique APIs into one user space. But other things that would be up on the block would be things like our study room booking service. That's a separate system that we could potentially develop an API for and seamlessly integrate into our environment. Things like interlibrary loan services, our bibliographic citation management software. How can we integrate these into the experience so that it makes sense for students and there's no navigating between and amongst different software? Finally, we really want to provide access via all devices. So a responsive web design would really solve that problem for us because it would be accessible in any kind of environment. We could access it with Android, with new Windows Phone, with any size tablet, device, or laptop computer. But it's hard to see really if responsive web design is going to recreate the same kind of custom experience that you get via an app. So that's going to be a challenge, but I think we'll be able to figure it out. So one thing that I've learned, it's really complex and difficult to design your own user interface. This is an iterative process, and it will never, ever be done. This is something we have to keep responding to. You can't just do a website redesign and then leave it alone for 5 years anymore. I think we have to really think about these things as a process instead of finished products. The other thing is that prioritizing is incredibly important. Incredibly, incredibly important. What are the features that are most important to your users? When you're spending a significant amount of resources, whether they're human resources or money resources, on developing each of these individual features, it's really, really important to make sure you know which ones are going to be high use for your students or your customers. So that's something else that I've really been working quite a bit with. So that sort of wraps up the presentation portion of this webinar. I had quite a few questions after we did the last webinar, probably primarily because people couldn't hear a lot of what I was saying. But I've listed them here, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes to answer each of these questions. It's likely that lots of people have the same questions. So question number one that I received from participants was, what have you done for Android users? And how responsive is your third-party app designer to updating APIs? So I'll start with the first part of that question first. We started with an iOS app because well over 70% of our mobile users were coming in from Apple devices, and the remaining 30% were a mix of Android and other systems, so the cost-benefit ratio wasn't worth it at that stage of our development. So our plans for a responsive web environment will address all devices and platforms in the future. And the second part of that question, how responsive is your third-party app designer? Our developer that we're using in-house is called Hybrid Forge. They're a fantastic local company, and they're extremely responsive. So changes can be addressed in a timely fashion. They're primarily doing work as well on APIs that we're developing. So they're working more on user interface side than API side. But I think it's really important to develop expectations with any outsourced contractors that you have about timelines and ensure that people doing mobile development can keep up with a fast-paced change that users expect. So we release regular iterations of our app, and we just have to keep developing it, and we expect that anyone working with us keeps up at the same pace. Go, question two. Do you know if students are regularly using the app? Have you tested satisfaction? So we have a product called Flurry Analytics embedded in this app, so we do know how much use it's getting. In the middle of the summer, we had nearly 1,400 unique users who have run over 16,000 sessions on the app. And on average, people use it twice a week, and sessions last about a minute per use. So to me, that sounds pretty good. That seems like pretty good use of this product. We did user testing after our initial release, not to test satisfaction, but to test usability. So we asked several individual students to undertake a series of tasks and then recorded their screens and audio to identify trouble spots or areas where they were confused or didn't understand what was happening. Based on their experiences, we recommended changes, particularly to the search interface, that were integrated into the next version of the app. All right, so question three, how fast do you iterate on releases, and does the iTunes store cause delay problems? So we've been releasing updates as we make design changes or fix bugs. I think we're probably on about our 7th release since we launched the app in October last year. I think it's important to continue to demonstrate enhancements. Again, I'll just say this over and over again. You can't just build it and then leave it alone. The iTunes Store delay hasn't caused any problems. We find there's a pretty predictable 10-day delay from the time we upload new code to the store until it's available for users to download. So we can build that into our planning. Our developer is also really familiar with the requirements, so it makes it a little easier to manage the intricacies of the store. Okay, and the last question, again, this is a really good one. Why do an app first instead of a mobile optimized site? So, and that is a question that we ran back and forth amongst the team just over and over and over again. And eventually we decided that we were going to start with an app because it provides us with a very contained and restricted development environment to test our integration theories. So if you start with a mobile optimized site, you're suddenly designing really multiple sites in multiple scenarios with multiple devices. iOS app, so simple. You only have one device you're designing for. Maybe you're designing for Apple, the iPhone 4, iPhone 5, but it's really, really restricted. Overhauling the website too was a much higher risk because there are existing user expectations around that space and lots and lots of variables again with dealing with those different screen sizes and browsers. So developing for one platform, one operating system, one screen size makes a lot of the design decisions simpler and lets us focus on how best to solve some of the problems. So now that we've developed some expertise, we sort of understand how this integration thing can work, I think we feel much better prepared to tackle responsive web design with those same principles. All right, I think that is the end of my webinar for today. I want to thank you very much. I apologize to those of you who listened to the first webinar and couldn't hear the majority of the audio. I do hope that this has provided some insights for you that you felt may have been missing the first time around. And I hope I run into you at conferences in the future. All right, thank you and take care.